Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, live show number 495. It is the end of January 2025. I am your host, Lauren Gray. Thank you so much for joining us as everyone begins to catch us with us on the online streams. Welcome everyone that is joining us live on our simulcasts on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, so forth and so on. Plus, most importantly, on our TV channel, the Hospitality Channel, which is on your Amazon Prime, Amazon TV, Google TV, Apple TV, Roku, smart TVs, Samsungs, LGs. We're all there. You just have to look for the channel, sign up, or download, I should say. And we are always on the free side. We do have a paid gateway for additional content for hospitality industry folks and so forth. If you're one of those, which I mentioned you would be listening to this type of show, we welcome you to join us back there. We always put fun and interesting content, and we also allow for broadcasting of that content on our peer group, which is the Hospitality Marketing Club, which is everyone that is a current hospitality marketer. They sign up to our forum, our group. We're on a separate platform. It's not Facebook and all of that. It's its own platform, and it's a peer level group. So you get to dialogue with people and ask those questions with people that are mixed up with all of the fun stuff that goes on with our wonderful industry. So with that being said, let's jump into what we're going to be talking about today. This comes from, as always, what happens during the course of the weeks and so forth. I had the privilege and pleasure of quickly seeing and meeting old friends and so forth at HSMEI's leadership conference. There's their annual chapter conference for all of the HSMEI Hospitality Sales and Marketing International Group in domestic U.S. And also Canada. That gets together to kind of acknowledge those that have been successful with their chapter programs throughout the course of the year, plus also share best practices, learning things, and get excited about all the things that are available and continuously changing our ever-changing world of hospitality sales and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, I got to see friends, Jenny Thiessen, dear friend, who runs all the chapters. Got to meet the new CEO, Brian, and Julie Jones. Well, good to see them as well. Anyways, from all of that and listening to bits and pieces of presentations that were there, plus also I got the chance to spend some time with my clients in Orlando, came across some interesting conversations, or at least the inspiration. There were interesting conversations, obviously, but also get me thinking about plausible ways of solving things. We had many discussions, and we've had perpetual discussions about what this year is going to be like. Now, this year, as we always say with any year, is going to be different than others. I think, given current environmental changes of things, even more so. However, that being said, it's a flip of a coin. Either it's going to go positive. I mean, it's not an all or nothing, but it's either going to go positively in the sense that the changes that are occurring for whatever motivation will have a positive impact on our industry. Or it could be that it's going to have a downturn, or that there is a downturn. Now, as we know historically, economic impacts are not universal. There are those that get hit worse than others, those that get hit moderately, and of course, those that get hit not at all. From that world of things, there is always, where do you land? How is it that your property, the things that you're responsible for, going to be affected by this ebb and flow of potential market shift and changes? When I say market shift, it's about demand. And so the topic today, which I failed to say before I started telling all about it, is the concept of inception marketing, how looking backwards makes future marketing strategies. Now, you may think that's a Captain Obvious statement like, gee, yeah, duh, Lauren, we always look at forensically our data as to our previous performances to see how that measures against our current performances. That's a standard of what we do. And I acknowledge that that is the Captain Obvious component of that statement, that looking at your historicals and contrasting them to your current gives you a variance that determines whether or not you are on track for the growth that you project, or whether or not that you are waning, or whether or not that was a realistic goal and that it has to be evaluated because of the changes in the market and the demand that you're experiencing. All said and done. That's the Captain Obvious part of it. Now we're getting into the didn't think of that and or didn't know I could do something with it conversation. And that is inception marketing. It's a coin phrase talking about when do I begin to do my marketing for what I'm looking to develop marketing for. Now, I'd say unfortunately, but realistically, we approach marketing in a very standardized way with our vendors, our internal teams, whatever. Is we have this perpetuation of what we're doing this month, what we're doing next month, what we're doing the month after. And unfortunately, a lot of bias comes into what we do that month is a direct correlation of that month's activities. One, because of the booking window that we see our world in, that short 14, 7 day, 21 day, whatever, it varies according to time of year and type of product. So it's a ever flowing, but usually it's less -30. Whatever that world is usually -30. However, we're all, for those that do it as well, acknowledge the fact that we have a lot of impact now on what's happening 60 days out, 120 days out, 6 months out. And depending upon our product that we're offering, a lot of our business is initiated at the long term cycle, especially the farther the destination you go. If you're traveling internationally, you plan much farther out than saying, what are we going to do this weekend? I don't know. Let's hop on a plane and go to Europe, or let's go to the Caribbean or whatever. That doesn't happen, but it's not the norm for it to happen. So a lot of the marketing that you're doing now really has an impact on the long-term opportunity of when they're going to be actually booking with you. To that end, a lot of hotels, especially some of the examples I just gave internationally from certain markets, know that those people are looking at them at a certain time. Like, for instance, now that it's the very last day of January, they're now looking at late spring, shoulder summer travel. And so they're really amping up their advertising now, knowing that's going to have a very strong impact on that business interest. Now, in that world, the booking window could be 120 plus days out, that people are making affirmational choices now, and you're seeing it as bookings, okay, for June, for May, okay? Now, did that mean that everything in the person's world about making that choice of purchase happened just now? Like, they went from what should we do to we're making a choice and purchasing? Again, yes, it can happen, but it's not the norm. What really happened, that this is the accumulation of a trail behind us, a forensic trail, a historical trail of engagement. Now, we're very familiar with the phraseology of discovery, education, and conversion. That's our funnel basics in the most three-step process possible, similar to a story of a book, the introduction, the middle, and the end. And we know that there's a large volume that starts at the beginning, and a volume, I mean people, and it narrows down to a smaller volume of people, those that are now continuing on and educating themselves about what they discovered by discovering you. And then even a smaller and fractional value of those people that actually act on it and end up purchasing with you. So if you were to say that now is the time that people would be booking in May, and your marketing now is really helping augment that conversion value, I would say you're right. However, if I was saying that you only did marketing now to convert people to purchasing 120 days from now, that you missed a lot of business, because by the time the people are choosing to book now, they have already done their discovery and education process, and they're at the point of making the purchase decision. And you're trying to jump in the middle of that and saying, you know nothing about me, but you should consider me for purchase, and here's what I have to offer. That is what most marketing is doing right now. Most marketing is based on the last mile, because it is the most efficient place to be for the money you spend. Because as you go up towards larger numbers of people and backwards into the education, backwards into the discovery, you have to spend a lot of money, and it doesn't yield a conversion result value that is what you would see as an ROI of value. You spend a lot of money to make sure people are aware of you, but not a lot of people acted on that awareness. You spend a lot of money on educating people, but not as many people acted on that to going into the point of purchase. Not until they get down to the point where they've gone through all that, and now you see them looking at what you're doing, and then you want to jump up in front of them. Is it unsuccessful? Absolutely not, and none of us would be doing it. Is it the best way of doing it? I would say no. Is it one way of doing it? Absolutely yes. In progression to more things that you should do to build up that dedication to you. Now, stepping back just a step, we know that where we stay when we travel, is the core of the story of their travel experience. When they stay at our hotel or resort, it is the basis to which they experience what is it that is around us. The choice of where you stay has a huge, if not fundamental, impact on the experience and interest of their trip to our destination area. When you get earlier on in the sequence of exposing what you have available and why they should be listening to you, what you're offering in the sense of information and offers and value and amenities and all the things that pique their interest in categorically the purpose of their travel, you are solidifying a perspective at that point. If I stayed there, how close is X from me that I wanted to go see or do? How far away, or is it? Do they have the resort that or the restaurant that I like that has the food that I like? Is it there or is it nearby? How easy is it to travel to and from it? Is it close to the event driven or the purpose of my travel? These are the considerations that they look at. We translate that into marketing as to targeting the events that drive interest, the amenities and attractions that drive interest, the value of what we offer in the experience of what we want them to enjoy when they're with us to drive their interest, family travel, personal travel, spas, golf, all the things that we do to say we built this so that we could draw attention to people wanting to stay with us because we had it. All of that is marketing targeting. However, that being as it is and being as good as it is and produces what it does, and the strategy of being close to the very end to make sure you are always very much in front of people when they're in that volatile choice decision process, has a certain risk factor, and those are reflected in the numbers. It's hard for people to actually understand that when we talk about a conversion value of 2.5, or let's say generously 3% of everybody that came to your website ended up booking. Now, that's a very proud number to have. A 3% conversion is really a good number in the world of what we deal with. But you have to realize that means 97%, okay, didn't have anything to do with our business. They may have spent a large amount of time with us. They may have gone through lots of touching and attribution related activities with us and didn't convert. So sadly, we're focusing on the success of the 3%, and it's merited given the metrics of the world that we're in. But we're ignoring that the 90% of all the other stuff didn't do anything. But we had to probably spend money on a good portion of it. What portion you spent on it is relative to what investments you've made on all the reasons that people discover you, find you, and look at what you have to offer. Yes, there is unwarranted traffic, but that's gotten really, in comparison to historical, very small in comparison to what it used to be. With how our search engines and current usages of AI, of people looking and using and so forth, the value of discovering you is really related to a much better algorithmic way that a lot of it isn't just because of always misspells or mislabeling of what our website is. We don't sell widgets when we're a hotel kind of thing. Those things, those excuses of bad traffic, bounced traffic, as the old day used to say, people that came and actually landed on our page for no reason that they shouldn't have, bad bot traffic that just generates traffic to our site artificially. That's already culled out of our analytics in that sense. So all of that, okay, isn't a legitimate reason to simply dismiss the 97% that we get nothing from. Even if you make it as big of a number as you can of irrelevant traffic, it still is 20 to 30 times more traffic that you lost that could have been converted to your actual conversions you succeeded in. So make your worst number, and it's still leaving you a tremendous amount of traffic to your website that didn't convert. Now, we can dismiss some of those ones as just being ill-timed, didn't find what they wanted, price wasn't right, inventory and availability, not what you thought it was, ratings were low, okay? Reviews were poor, saw his family when they're not a family, whatever those nuances are. But again, as we have improved in our SERP categorizations, those numbers have diminished as into the error factor when it comes to why somebody didn't end up booking with you. I would like to say that it's really boiled down to an affinity of symbionts to begin to relate to how you're looking. And think of your own travel experiences. As you begin to look through the options that you have, you mentally consider what it would mean if you were there. You mentally place yourself there. So the better you're at describing what it's like to be there, the easier it is for a person to predict or to pretend that they're there. And to think about, well, is it really worth it to take the bus to the place I want to go to, or do I have to take an Uber to it, or taxi or whatever? Um, the event, how am I going to get back and from that? Is it going to be more of a challenge compared to staying at that other place? Do I want to be closer than this? This one has a really good restaurant, but the rooms aren't reviewed. That mental process, that mental exercise that people go through, we have to have content that helps them in that discovery process. But we all do it. We look at different places to stay into. We see the settle up and find an affinity for one. Like, well, that makes sense. This is nice and close. I like this one. The rooms look good. The restaurants are nearby. The transport. So we start checking off boxes mentally that we have, but we only have in our head as to what we find of merit and value for considering this place better than another. Now, once we get some settlement, like, okay, I'm not buying anything there yet, but I'm just going to, like, if I were to go there, what are some things? And you start expanding your education process. Well, if I stay there, then okay, that's the bus route, or that's the taxi system, or that's right across the street, and we all have our methodology of doing this. Now, if we get to a point where we find enough negatives, we say, well, no, that's okay. Well, let's go to another place that I think is also a consideration. And you move over your considerations there, and you begin to role play if you were there. All of that requires traffic of discovery. As people do that process, they look and see what it is that they are looking for and for why. They leave a breadcrumb trail of what they do. This is probably one of my longer explanations of the topic of inception marketing, but inception is the origin. Inception is, by definition, the nascent beginning. Okay. And of all the things that we do for marketing, there is a beginning, and there's an end, which is the conversion or the abandonment. That's pretty much it. And I say that in a blunted term because there is residual interest that just didn't apply to this trip. And there's ways to cultivate that relationship. And maybe they come back for a better reason to stay with you than the one that they picked another location for. I'm not going to get on the blurry lines, although I just did. This is about either they converted with you or they didn't. But every historical breadcrumb, every relationship of discovery and decision, education decision, has a trail of looking and searching and engagement. With the world of GA4 that we have the ability to go historical. And if we didn't identify back in the day, okay, we can still go back and look at the data, which is the really cool part about GA4. Back when we had Google Analytics, unless you had decided to track it, you couldn't define it to go back to look at it because you had to marker it to be able to track it. Here, everything is tracked, and then we can go back and look at things that we weren't knowing would be of interest and defining them and seeing the data related to them. So taking just our own website as the example of inception marketing, how looking backwards helps for future marketing strategies. Let's just take a time slot that says, during the first 2 weeks of May, we have a very strong event in our market, and the weather is good, and a certain demographic and certain market segments really enjoy our destination. It's a good time for us, but we have a higher competition, or we've never gotten our full market share because somebody always beats us at it, or whatever reason of it is that you want to target on improving your business for this 2-week time. The first thing you can do is look at, when did people first start coming to your site for the pages you had related to that event and to the dates of interest. Now, tracking the dates of interest of people coming in looking for dates of interest, you can do that in GA4. So you can go and look in your analytics. Looker Studio is great for this, but you can look in your analytics. Looker Studio build up, you can build it even easier, but we'll just go with the analytics side of it. You can go in and say, who is looking for these dates? And it's going to show you the traffic of it. And then you can refine some of that is, well, what other pages did they go to? Did they go to the pages about the event that I had built? Did they go to pages about my accommodations? Did they go to my, and you begin to look at, when did all this stuff start happening? When did they start looking for these dates? Now you'll get the outliners. You'll get somebody that a year ago looked at the date. There has to be a trail off, and usually it's a percentage of the total volume. If you look at all of the volume of traffic that you had for the 2-week period, if you look and say everybody that looked for these dates is a quantified amount of 10,000 people. It's a low number, but we'll make it up. Out of how far I will look back to data that's relevant, I'll look for the arc of the bell that says 80% of this traffic, the 80-20 rule, is probably applicable. 20% of the traffic, the outliners and so forth, is probably not relevant because it's not worth us pursuing some handful of queries a year ago compared to the hundreds of queries that started 6 months ago or 3 months ago. Let's just make it easy, 3 months ago. So that's our starting point. Okay, we're going to look at data from 3 months previous to May. So we're looking at now. So we say, all right, so this is when people started touching our website about what we're doing. That's just one channel. That's just our website. Now, let's go into our social media platforms. We have been putting content out. We've been having things. People may find us because of our relationship with the event that they're interested in. But when you go into Facebook Meta and you look at when people started engaging with your content related to early May. Was it your specials? Was it your content about the event? Was it about the helpful points to do and don't? Your posts related to those dates and times, okay, of the event itself and so forth, and see chronologically when people started interacting with your content. That might go back 5 months. Might be December. People were thinking about it while they were having the holidays of like, you know what, better get on the ball about what I'm going to be doing in May, their second week. Okay. And they putzed around with it in December and they started seeing some social stuff. This would be considered part of the discovery aspect. Maybe there was some paid campaigns, okay, that you did on social. When did they begin to get touched? Maybe that was 4 months ago, because usually the progression would be organic, then paid, and move forward. Then you would see, when did they start touching your paid campaigns where you're promoting the event? And you see, now that's a little self-fulfilling because obviously until the ads start running, you don't know that people start touching them, but there is a bit of a latency. If you're well-timed, they start touching them as soon as you start releasing them. But if you want to start creating the roll-up of when they go out to market, they're not really much traction to them traffic-wise, and then they begin to pick up traffic as the interest begins to grow and the content relationship of what the ads are offering begin to click, you will see that progression. So you see where that inception point of engagement for your paid campaigns run. If you're running OTT and you have run campaigns and interest, you look at the same thing for them. And that might have been even farther back, 4 months ago. Anyway, you begin to piece what looks very similar to a Gantt chart as a timeline as to when the channels of interaction occurred for this window of dates. That for the first 2 weeks of March, this is when all of these channels began to get measurable traffic of value. Doesn't mean conversion, it means measurable traffic. When did the inception of the usage of that channel begin to influence or connect with the dates that we're looking to build better business on? When you get those inception points, you can begin then to say, okay, and you can do other simple tools, trend tools like Google Trends and so forth. We can just look very specifically at the event and so forth and see when people begin to look for that event. It gives you a nice marker in the sand. It isn't accurate to say this date versus the next date, but it gives you some range of a feeling that says it's probably not worth really investing financially in until 90 days out from the event. Now, February compared to the beginning of May. So you start doing this. You start putting up, you make sure your content on your website is up to date and has been up to date so it cultivates organic value and authority, so forth as time goes on. Maybe you get into the answer box where some of the content you've been sharing about the event gets shared as a reference point related to the event. That's a lot of the SEO groundwork that is always perpetuated all the time, every day. We're just taking a slice out of the deck, but there is hundreds and thousands of things that this content and relevancy always has to be maintained and cultivated through the entire process as you go through the whole cycle of the daily, weekly, monthly demands of the year. That's SEO. That's what SEO is. That's what SEO should be doing for you. That's how you should be handling SEO. That's how your schema should work. Your citations should work. All of that stuff to make sure that you are clearly identified correctly, the content is relevant, and Google will maybe even use your content as a reference point related to the very event that you're trying to cultivate business from. SEO side, there it is. When it comes to organic content from that, okay, you have your social posting, which is exposing the content you've already generated and that you know is valuable and usable, and presenting it in format for people to be able to begin to get interested. Because as they begin to look at the point of interest, the event, they'll see that you have relevant content associated with it. If they look and see that you're related to the market they're interested in, they may see and look and discover your content that you've been sharing organically within your normal news feed. If they decide to follow and interact with you, at some point, as you look at the numbers, you begin to turn on your paid social campaigns to take the better engagement posts and amplify their audience to make sure that it shows up in front of more people or similar to the ones that have already touched it. That is your custom audiencing that you do and your lookalike audiences that you do, which you would already be having built from your previous time that you ran it the year before. Your custom audience is built from that. I go a little fast for this, so we'll go back to this process of inception working. So if you now have your dates of inception for the channels that contributed to your events and your business from the first 2 weeks of May, now you have to look at the proportionate value of these channels. It's wonderful that social had such an early engagement, but it's a trickle compared to the flow of paid social. And that flow of paid social is but a fraction compared to the stream of paid media from Google. And all of that pales into the organic value of your website's traffic based on the content you've been perpetually sharing. But they all have their value percentages. And you need to know what those percentages are. Your organic social may represent 5% of direct channel, which you're looking at, oh, that's really terrible. Social organic is not really meant to be such a strong direct channel, but it is a huge amplifier. We've had plenty of shows to discuss that for all the other channels that it augments. Anyway, you've determined the percentages of contribution historically that led to the business of the 2 weeks that you're now focusing on. So now you have a proportionate ratio of what you should be focusing financially for. How much money do I need to spend in each of these? Now, all of this conversation needs to happen before your earliest inception point. All of this strategy should be a thoughtful expression prior to finding out that we should have started organic social in December, and here we are, February. We should have known this in November to make sure that all of our content is laid out and mapped in our calendars and our posting schedule and everything else, so we're always ahead, which technically means right now, depending upon your lead time of inception for all the channels that you have, you should be already working on fall. Yes, I know. Depressing for those who aren't. Anyway, we'll get to why all this becomes valuable as we move forward. So now you have proportionate value. You know what you needed to have done when you need to have it ready for it, to know what you need to invest into it. So these things and mechanisms are working in place. You work it through a progression of communication that as they engage with you, they have a next progression of communication. You create target marketing related to the engagement so that as they responded to the first messaging, you've tailored a new messaging with them to continue the conversation. You're still not pushing hard conversion. You're always making it available, but you're not like buy now, get now, last minute deal, don't miss it, blah, blah, blah. You're progressing forward with here's more information that could be helpful in what you're interested in. And this is some things to look forward to should you come. And always be present. If you want to come to us and look more at what we have to offer or what's special for us, we always have a call to action. It's never pushed, but it's because in all reality, they know you're a hotel or resort. They know you would prefer to think that out of all of your goodwill effort, you're going to have them buy something from you. Validates the effort. So they're not ignorant to that point. Being their chummy buddy and saying, oh, we're just doing this for the love of it. It's great to come off in context, not in the reality. So you do this, and what you've done, as we mentioned earlier in our discussion today, is created a bonding, an empathetic way of thinking of what it would be like to be with you, to do the things that we're referring to. Now, obviously, our content, as helpful as it will be self-centric. We're going to talk more about what's near us, more about why what we do, where our location compared to other things is valuable, more of the benefits of being with us for the things that we're talking about, than talking about the things that we're not as conveniently located to that's on the other side of town or so forth and so on. It's not that we ignore it, it's just not featured. There's a difference. So as these people empathetically connect with what it'd be like to stay with us, they begin to mold their trip under the belief or the thought of being where we are to do what they want to do. And this happens way ahead of the booking window that everybody else is waiting to pounce on with marketing. So we do this process. We cultivate the content. We cultivate the relationships. We cultivate and nurture the storylines, the workflow of progressive conversation, and so forth. And again, through the discovery and education phase, we're not talking about typical ROI that we're familiar with on last click attribution values. We're there just before they clicked and they picked us instead of you. Okay. We're talking about progressively getting a relationship built so that they empathize with us. So when our competitors at the last minute step in, okay, and say that they're offering a certain type of rate or a certain thing or pressure techniques of buy now before you lose it and all this other stuff, there is a less likelihood that they're going to jump from us to them because they've already begun to mentally identify being with us for all of what we discussed with them. And for them to go look at the other place and go, oh yeah, okay, well, that's a really nice rate. But dang, now all of a sudden they're farther away from that. I'll have to refigure that. And I'm still figuring out how to get to them. I mean, they have a nice restaurant. I mean, they could be our arch nemesis in the market. That they have always traditionally gotten better market share than we have for this event. Because of all the things that they do right. But a lot of them, even if it's a lower price than us in comparison, now they're fighting the familiarity and the symbiotic relationship that people have attached to us on for all of the engagement they've had with us, where they're like, I know it's $10 less and it's a nice place and everything, but I really kind of mentally, I mean, they may not say this out loud to themselves, but I've kind of mentally attached myself to origin where I'm going to do from here. Everything else, I've already worked through the process. I've had this arc of dialogue with this place. And it's not a loyalty thing like, oh, well, I hate to let them down. Because they know at the end of the day, we don't know who they are and they don't know who we are individually anyway. Who are they letting down? Are they going to get a, why did you leave me letter, dear John? No, it's just for them, they've mentally equated all of what they're doing, whether they're at that point too lazy to make the change because they'd have to start from a zero again to figure out what doing that over there would be. And we also, our competitors, by being present of do it now before you lose it, actually push themselves out of the discussion because a lot of the people that have taken the long progressive discovery education arc with us don't feel the sense of urgency. As a matter of fact, they're like, well, if I have to figure it out now, if I get off this button link, I can't get this offer. Well, I don't even know. I'd have to change so much of what I already have planned to fit for where you are. No, if it's now or never, then it's a no now. And that happens. Now, all said and done, you're still going to lose people to a better offer. You're going to lose those people that are more familiar with it. It's like, oh yeah, that's no big deal. That's a really great place too. Good rate. Let me just do that one. Yes, you're going to lose those people. You're not going to get 100% of what efforts you've made for it by no stretch. But we are talking about putting a dent into the people that we just dismiss as being, well, that's 97% of the people we just don't do anything for. Let's focus on the people that we do things for. The 3% conversion. If we even added a percentage conversion to what we're doing, make it 4% instead of 3%. It's not just 1% growth more. It's 10 times more. It's actually 30 times more business that we acquired doing this inception marketing than not doing it and doing like we historically have done or what our competitors have historically done, which is wait until they finally get to the point where they're making decisions about where to stay, the booking window, and then shove and oversaturate and overfrequency our ads to the point of nausea to browbeat them down into the belief of pick now. If you don't, you're going to lose it. Pick now because I'm better than whatever you're comparing against. Pick now because if you don't, my rates are going up. Whatever, push we do. And they're like, oh, okay, boom. Okay. We've created a more positive relationship with them, which cultivates lifetime value because once we get them to stay with us, and they do stay with us, and we live up to all the expectations we've given to them for us staying with us, then they will, on their return, should we want them, and we will do everything we can while they're staying with us to ensure that they were willing and wanting to come back because they had such a great experience, then we value them future forward so that at the very least we get another booking from them at and about what they paid for the last time they were with us, but more hopefully that they will do two things. One, think that it's also a chance to maybe come back at a different time because they thoroughly enjoyed what they had when they came there for the reason that they did, and they want to pick another time to do it. And two, that they share their positive experiences with friends and family and everyone else in such a way that it solicits one of their friends from their advocacy to also want to enjoy it. Now you're taking that one acquisition of purchase from them and you're doubling it by their return and you're tripling it by their expansion with being an advocate of us. That's the value of this. Those numbers never truly get put back on the initial cost of effort versus conversion. It's a calculation that so many properties just don't do. They don't look back and modify their frequency of their guests to the guests. And then, so taking the same example I was just complaining about, if I spend $100 cost of acquisition of $25 to get this guest, okay, and it was 20-to-1 ratio, great, wonderful, everybody's patting themselves in the back, okay, that cost of acquisition gets cut in half the next time, added to because of whatever efforts were used in general, okay, to keep them soliciting, keep them engaged. So it's not a full clean value. There's an add-on back on to continue the relationship, lifetime value, the CRM costs and so forth to keep the continuation going. But it's fractionally less. If you've never done a study of how much it is to keep a guest versus find a new guest, you'll find this huge inversion of scale. It is fractionally valued cost to keep a guest compared to the cost to acquire a new guest. It is not even close to a comparison. It should never be. So the cost of me keeping that guest and having them come back a second time, now that cost of acquisition has gone down even more, say less than half. And of course, if they added to having somebody else that ended up acquiring with us because of their advocacy, technically you could apply it to the cost of acquisition of them and the 0 to none acquisition of the guest itself, but there is a fractional amount. But even that's a fractional amount compared to acquiring a new guest. You put all that together, your value proposition of your initial campaign that started this wheel turns into an incredibly valuable, highly effective, amazingly cost-effective means of acquisition. That whole arc comes from starting ahead of everyone else and through the inception of engagement. Through that inception of engagement, people begin to build the relationship that solidifies their interest, that cultivates their conversion in spite of contrasting competitive advertising. That whole process allows you to be ahead of your, because it also allows you to begin to forecast more accurately forward what would be your rate integrity capabilities. Even though you don't have hard actualization, you know what's in the pipe. You know, by doing this a year to 2 to 3 years in a row, the expected conversion values of your campaigns in such a way that when your competitors begin to get nervous and they begin to do silly things and they start jumping rates and whatever help like this, that you can maintain the poker face in knowing that you're driving business at a certain value to a point of conversion because you have cultivated this perpetuation of repeat guests. A lot of times when I speak at conferences and so forth, I ask simple questions. A lot of it is your channel percentage contribution breakdown or how much your direct channels contribute to you. The other of it is what is your loyalty percentage? What is your rebook percentage? It's also a number that nobody gets right. No, I wouldn't say nobody. I did have a correct answer, and that's because they literally keep it as a part of their business mantra as to what their actual return guest number is. And I applauded them for that. Most people are artificially too high. Some people are amazingly surprised because they think it's so much lower because they don't seem to feel like they have a relationship with their guests. They're more of a channel of perpetuating new business, and they're surprised by repeat business that they do get. They're also surprised by the repeat business they get per channel. And this goes into the discussion of OTA versus doing your own meta and so forth, and keeping that retention of direct channel compared to giving it away to a third party, plus paying them more money than you can pay for yourself to do it, to acquire that business. All because if you did this inception marketing, you're doing what you usually give an excuse to an OTA as to why you let them do it. It's like, well, they have the money to burn. We all talk about the amazing budget that Expedia and Hotels.com has for marketing. Yep. That's to sell somebody in your market, not necessarily you. If they can't sell you, they're going to sell whoever they can, your competitor in market. They just want to sell because they get the commission off of whatever they sell. You're out to sell for yourself. You want your success of your place. That's a huge difference to that. But the argument that they spend so much money high in the funnel to make sure people want to come to your destination, and then from that excuse of doing that, you inherently derive benefit in numbers from that. All of what we just discussed in inception marketing is literally doing a contra model to that. The ability for you to be in the high-end exposure of discovery, to be in the moderate exposure of education, and to continue those relationships to the conversion level that your competition will be hard-pressed to take away from you. There, now it's those people are yours for them to be taken away compared to gambling to fight over the same scraps that your competitors are fighting over. And it allows you to roll into your booking window which doesn't necessarily change everyone's behavior because everyone will wait to the end to see if there's any better deals and so forth. But the effort to change what they have already planned with you to doing something else, now that turns into a comparison module of how much different in price does it have to be for them to jump ship from what they had already expected to do with you compared to their willingness to jump ship and go to another competitor because the price just was too much more. A lot of your competitors don't know what that is, and they just moderate their price like, oh, we're going to be $10 less than them. $10 a night ain't going to get it. Not when they've already planted their mentality into staying with us. $20, depending upon the margin of that, might begin to pique their interest. $30, $50, now we're talking about serious consideration that's what it's going to take to get them away from us, which means they've low rated themselves so much that their yieldability has gone down. If they're willing to do that, they may not have a good operations. Well, they certainly don't have a good revenue manager. They may not have good enough operations to keep them for the second year, because then if you did lose the guest who was thinking about staying with you, now goes over there because of a $50 drop in price, and they have a terrible experience, and you're doing your good social monitoring to realize that these people had bad experiences, and you augment your marketing by showing why, if you should come back to the market again for the event and whatever, that we have all of the things you were complaining about, we do really well. Look at our reviews, look at our product, look at our whatever it is that they were complaining about at your competitor that they settled for the lower rate to. Now you're targeting those people, retargeting those people, and showing the content of why you didn't have that problem and why it would have probably better. So people go say, you know what? I should have stayed where I first thought of. It really looks like that was the better place. I followed the $50. Yeah, it saved me $50, but I didn't enjoy myself, or it wasn't what I wanted, or it was too far away, or it was just a poor decision on my part for just chasing the reduced rate. Next time, I'm going to do that. Should there be next time? Depends how bad the experience was, right? We used to do that all the time for, we had a place in Canada that was one. So this airport that it was around in Canada, weather or winter always has an effect on air traffic anywhere, but especially in Canada when it comes to some things. There was 4 direct airport hotel competitors. We were the new shiny 5th. Well, everybody that flies to that airport already knows enough about the weather delays and so forth that come from it, and they already have their hotels that they've been stuck at or stayed at because of it. So they were completely unaware of this. This was back a few years. So what we did is we geo-targeted the entire airport that anybody was pinging off on social related to delayed, stuck, cold weather, blah, blah, whatever. We pinged out on that same channel that show that our shuttles at gate 5 and show this for free shuttle, brand new hotel, blah, blah, blah. And we'll give you 10% off the best available rate that we're showing that night. And what ended up happening was our competitors, who also were located, their shuttles were at gate 5, couldn't understand why there was literally a line of people waiting at this brand new, nobody should know about hotels shuttle location, while they're standing there waiting for their first people to show up at their shuttles to go to the new hotel, because all of them had at the time the ability to get 10% off, ride a new shuttle and go to a new hotel. It worked exceptionally well, and that was literally making sure you communicate with the people in a way that they want to understand what their options are and for the value of what they're looking for. Being stuck in an airport hotel, it's not like a resort destination. It's a function of value. How good and nice is it? What cost is it? Because it's usually an unexpected cost. And are all the things that I need to worry about, transportation, food, cleanliness and security and so forth, there? And when you talking about a new hotel and discounts towards those things and good reviews about your food and so forth and so on, it's an easy pick compared to they know that place well enough to know it's tired, well enough that there's sometimes scheduling issues for their shuttle or whatever it is. But we took advantage of this being the shiny new penny. So anyways, beers and stories, that's always what goes well together, right? To kind of go through some of the step process, just to kind of wrap up our conversation today about Inception marketing, how looking backwards makes future marketing strategies. Step by step is, first off, you select target dates. It's kind of like what we did. We said 1st of May. Identify your channels used. That is, historical production channels, like which channels contributed to your traffic business last year for those dates. Determine the inception date of each of those channels. When did those channels start turning productive in the sense of the traffic related to those dates? You create the attribution value as into how much each of the channels contributed to the overall success of the revenue you generated for those dates. You define the content needed for that, whether it be in addition to organic, but also your paid campaign advertisements and specials and promotions, whatever you have. You have that already predefined ahead of when all this starts, but that's what you have to create. You have to create your page on your website. You have to create your content in your social posts and so forth. and what you're going to need for your paid campaigns. And that will help you determine what the valuable or acceptable costs are per channel as to how much you're willing to spend towards those efforts, because you already know the historical traffic value of those channels, and you already know the cost per clicks, and you know the cost of acquisitions, you know the traffic volume. So you take that and you margin up what additional traffic you would like to get, that threshold of expense as to how much more money you can spend to get more percentage audience. And so you calculate that against what your total capabilities of revenue generation is for those 2 weeks. If you're at a 60% occupancy in your 100-room hotel, that means you're selling 60 rooms out of 100, and you want to boost up more sales at the same rate, then you increment out what each percentage of occupancy means value-wise. Multiply that times your length of stay, so you get total value of transaction. Determine how many transactions you need for the increment you want. Translate that to the each channel cost conversion as to how much each channel costs in ratio. Like, am I getting a 10-to-1, 5-to-1, 6-to-1, 2-to-1, whatever. So you know how much to spend for each of the channels based on their contribution value. If you get more value from your paid campaigns and it's at a certain cost per click, that means it's going to cost you this much more to generate this much more business from them. You break that down, and now you have a budget for this much money in each of these channels. Cumulatively, this will yield this much revenue by doing these campaign increases. That's what you bring to your ownership. That's what you bring to your management company. Say, this is what I need to do. And then you put the scheduling together in your events calendar so that come December of last year, now December will be this year for the next example of this, of what we produced, you're already in the pipe for the content you had running on your website, the content that you're going to need for your social posts. They begin to get enacted in December, because that's the inception point of your social organic platforms. That transitions into which ones were tethered well in the sense of engagement. Those go into your paid social campaigns based upon the inception point of your paid social channel. Those in turn begin to expand into your paid ad campaigns with Google and so forth. That translates into your retargeting and your capabilities of what you're looking for in the sense of developing business for what you need. And that translates into your offers and rates and dates and promotions and specials that get augmented into your paid campaign strategies. And then from there, you get into your booking window. At that point, you're pushing hard, like you normally would, for all the final conversion values of all the efforts and investments you've made up to that point. You keep benchmarks as to whether or not you're doing this at pace. Is it working in the numbers that you expected it to work in? And if so, if not, obviously change what you're doing, modify accordingly. If it is, determine whether or not there might even be more value that was discoverable value. You didn't know there was going to be more value to it. So all of those things go into the process of inception marketing, how looking backwards makes future marketing strategies. There, I think we did well. With that in mind, should you have any questions, feedbacks, comments, you have two ways of reaching me. Email is the easiest, lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. I know it's a long URL, but that's us. I answer each and every email related both to the TV channel show here, as well as also our audio podcast, where we get into more tools and functionalities of how to do some of this stuff, which we will be today, about how to calculate these types of things, the means of how to use Looker Studio and stuff like that. Or you can reach us audibly by going to hdm.news/talkback. There I keep an audio question of the week, sometimes related to the topic or future topic, and then you can respond to it or have your own query, your own questions or feedback, and then you tell me whether or not I have the authorization to refer to you, to use it, whatever. Sometimes you just ask questions and you ask not to be brought up into the dialogue, which I respect always. If you want to catch up with us in a peer level group, go to hospitalitymarketing.club, put your email in. I send you a quiz to validate that you are indeed a current hospitality marketer, somebody that's at the bottom up. We don't mind beginners, but they have to be in the business, in the field. They're responsible for hospitality marketing. Once that's the case, you get into a peer group, and then you just start joining aspects of the group related to where you're most interested in or things. And it's about not selling anything. Don't sell in there. It's all about interaction capabilities. We ask people questions that, when you ask normal people that are involved in interest in what you're doing, you don't get that glazy look of or you have to go spend an hour to explain yourself to get to the question that you would prefer to talk to somebody that already understands why you're asking it. So it's a great group to join. Lots of fun. A lot of the inspirations of our shows come from that as well. But those are two places where you can catch us on our radio station, hospitalityradio.com. It's in 39 countries. We already have a podcast that goes out. This is a radio station that goes out. We translate the show in 11 languages, and we simulcast this show again Wednesdays, 11:30 a.m., both Sydney, Australian time for our APAC friends, and 11:30 a.m. Wednesday mornings London time for our EU and Mideast friends. And we translate in 11 languages as well. So that, and you have our TV channel location, all smart TVs. So I think I have beaten the drum enough as to where you can find us if you haven't already, which means you've already found us by watching us. So with that, my name is Lauren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time, and I look forward to talking to you next week.